Hi all, welcome back to the channel. So today we want to look at number 5, and we kind of touched on it on the last video. But basically, I want to kind of show you n8n, and what n8n is. N8n is a workflow builder, so you can actually plug in a number of components that are, you know, used on a daily basis and automate the workflows. So we touched on this on the last actual video itself, setting up the basic n8n workflow. Um, so today I want to kind of dive into a bit more about n8n because as you can sort of see, I'm on the n8n website here. And as you can actually sort of see, I mean, it's a very, very well documented website, but you can actually sort of see what the types of items it can do. Like it can do IT ops, SecOps, DevOps, sales, and it gives you kind of a list of items that you can basically do here. So it's all kind of built around using existing components, so that you can build your workflows and automate a lot of tasks, like let's sort of say sending out a Slack message or sending out emails or sending out notifications, anything kind of like that. So you can actually sort of see here you have like IT ops here, where you have like an AI agent, which will basically kind of summarize what's basically kind of happening here, and you know do some interactions with Jira and Slack here. Then you've got some sec ops here, where you have an actual, it's talking about like has a new issue and extract the IPs and domains, and scan the URL and get a report, and merge your reports and then kind of post the results. If you look at the DevOps, it's the same type of where you actually have a webhook talking to your AI agent, and you can actually have a switch on what it basically does. So if it's a get, a post, or delete here. So you can sort of see, when you kind of go through these workflows, you can sort of see, it can, do a number of items that allows you to kind of actually kind of automate. And then there's a kind of n8n, you know, um, person here, which is kind of explaining what n8n is. But I wanted to kind of show you, you may have never sort of seen this, and I've started to kind of, experiment with n8n in the past few months. And the reason I've been kind of using it is actually automating the API calls itself. So that's very kind of handy, to make sure that, it's consistent and ready every single time that I call the actual API. But I want to kind of show you this self-hosted AI starter kit. And I kind of found this, I was setting up n8n and I was kind of doing it manually, um, basically at the start. And I showed you that in the last video, but there's an actual self-hosted AI starter kit here, which basically, if you look through the documentation here, gives you, some fantastic information about what actually n8n is and what the starter kit is. But basically, it will actually contain everything that you actually need to get n8n running on your Mac. So you can sort of see, there's 4 kind of components: the actual n8n itself. There's Llama. It basically, has an actual um, LLM platform built in. It has Qdrant, and it has Postgres, and it kind of walks you through the steps of actually building those out. It'll kind of talk about whether you're Mac user or GPU user, or you know on Linux or whatever. But if you read through this documentation itself, I found it really, really kind of good. One, you kind of learn an awful lot about n8n, what it actually is, you know, um, and you can sort of see, it's well liked here. So it's in the community itself for GitHub. It's well kind of liked and well used. The starter kit. So when you kind of go through it, I just actually kind of ran through it quickly there. So I'll kind of show you this here, what actually happened when I kind of ran through it. So, the first thing that I did was, like I've been kind of doing in the other videos, is I took down this, version 5 self-hosted AI starter kit, um, and I cloned the repository. And really, I'm using the CPU because I'm using Mac here, and I just ran my Docker Compose up. And it sort of it sort of said to me, okay, so it's actually kind of starting to kind of pull down these images. So you can sort of see it pulled down n8n, it pulled down Llama, pulled down Progress, and pulled down all of these images, quite fast as well. But basically, it started to actually kind of create then all of my kind of containers that I'd actually need for this self-hosted starter kit, and it went through, setting up the components. So setting up my, Postgres and Llama and all these types of things, and you can sort of walk through these here, and you'll actually sort of see what it's actually doing when it's running that Docker Compose. But finally, when you kind of come down here, you'll sort of see that, when you get towards the end here, you can actually sort of see that, it's then kind of initializing n8n and the setup, and n8n is ready on that kind of port. You can sort of see it's set up some environment variables here, and it's setting up your Llama model here. So when I kind of go in here now onto my workflow here, um, I got this new URL on localhost 5678, and it just kind of allowed me to actually kind of log in. So I logged in, and you can actually sort of see here that there's an actual, as kind of default, you get this kind of personal area here, and if you just want to kind of create a new workflow, I was kind of showing you the last time, but if you want to create a new kind of workflow, you can actually kind of go up to create a workflow here, and create a most kind of basic workflow, and start adding your components, which we'll kind of do in a different video. But I'll kind of go back to, there's a demo workflow here that's kind of included here. Okay, and you can kind of go in here and make it active and inactive, and all this kind of sort of stuff, and you can kind of click in here, and one thing here, you can sort of see like there's a model here. So if I open the chat window here, you know um I can kind of just type in kind of test, and you can actually sort of see that my workflow is actually running here. So it's going to kind of connect over to this Llama model that I actually have ready, that we sort of saw here, that kind of came down in here, and I know what kind of a Llama model I can kind of have, and you can basically kind of switch these Llama models out, and you could reuse a different Llama model, which I may kind of show you in a different video as well. But just for kind of today, you can actually sort of see that everything you know worked here because everything was actually green. So in the chat trigger, it opened up, um it opened up, a new kind of running of this workflow here. So the way this kind of works is it kind of passes through. So I passed through, like in the chat trigger here, passed through test, which sent it over to this LLM chain. And the LLM chain actually sent it over to my kind of Llama model here. Um, and then it didn't actually do kind of much, but it did actually kind of provide an output here, which is the kind of start of where you kind of start to use these workflows. Because what actually happened here is it sort of says, okay, so a human input test, and then the output from this Llama model here with the LLM chain, was, it says, it looks like you're testing if I'm working properly. Is there anything else I can help you with? You could actually kind of start to hook up other components here that they've kind of showed here. um, you know, um, and there's a number of components here. So if I kind of go in here, I can kind of click in here, and I can actually sort of see, okay, so I've got kind of all of these kind of components here, and I could do something in the app. I can do data transformation, I can do a flow, I can do core. I can, if I just kind of go in here something, I could actually kind of output that kind of result to somewhere else. So you sort of see it's got kind of great support here, and all of the time there's actually been great support being kind of added into n8n. There is kind of some debate over which is the kind of correct, or maybe the most kind of popular um workflow application. Um, but like I sort of say, I've kind of set this up for using APIs, and I find it really, really handy because you can actually kind of, do one call to get your authentication token, and then kind of, when you get your authentication token, pass the token over. So these kind of components can actually pass information over between themselves. Um, and then kind of, just have your actual output, and then at that point you could kind of, email that off, or you could save it off or whatever. But you can sort of see here, I mean, there's quite a number of actual components here um that are kind of supported, and as I sort of say, I mean, they're always basically being added. But you can do like, if statements and filters, and loop over items and merge data and all these kind of sort of stuff, you know so the documentation will kind of show you how to, really kind of get into creating really kind of good workflows that you could kind of test. But the kind of functionality is that, because it's a workflow, it can actually kind of pass information. These are called nodes here, and you can basically pass information between these kind of nodes, um, and make something really kind of useful. And there's quite a few examples on, on how to kind of create a really kind of good workflow. But if I kind of go back here, um, it's this self-starter kit, allowed me to just kind of clone the repository. So this is the repository here. You can sort of see, there's contributors here, but I can clone this repository, and then I can basically get everything that I basically want, set up really, really quickly, and actually get it like n8n, set up really, really kind of quickly. So um yeah, really handy, really nice. N8n, I'm a big fan of it. We're going to, during this kind of series, explore other ones, other workflows. But for this one, I think it's a great kind of introduction to, workflows, and trying to automate tasks. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these items, you'll sort of see people get really kind of skilled with these kind of workflows, and they create all the different types of, workflows that do a number of different tasks, and automated tasks, and they kind of build like a kind of little um army of these kind of workflows, and these agents, and they're all kind of doing something, repetitively, to kind of help their lives, and make their kind of lives an awful lot easier. So, like I sort of say, I've built these out, for um, using them within kind of APIs, and for calling actual kind of APIs. So it's good, and they can also kind of run scripts, and they can run bash scripts, and you can kind of put a script into it, and you could put a Python script, and you can do all of these types of things. So it's really good, really nice to kind of play around with. And again, with this kind of GitHub repository, makes it just kind of so easy to actually get this n8n up and running. So okay, that's all we have for now. Thank you.